This is content.
Sorry. Okay, I'm still clicking buttons, but the video I was watching was attached to an article in, it wasn't Business Insider, but it was a similar kind of business something something, where they
Yep.
described the neutron as the hungry, hungry hippo fairing set. And that is by far one of the most delightful things I have read.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
We need more hungry, hungry hippo references in the world.
Apparently we're live.
Yeah, we are.
You pressed the button. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. All
You
right.
told me to press the button, so
I know.
pressed the
Well, you were
button.
talking about reusable rockets, and it was like delaying your multitasking while you were trying to get the stream started, and yet that was the kind of valuable content that people want to hear, and yet it was slowing down your going live.
I know.
It was madness. It was pure madness, and now we can just focus and actually talk about reusable rockets.
It's true. So this live recording is not going to switch to any pictures of the rockets, any animations of the rockets. We're going to add all of that in post. Allie, I love you. Please don't kill me later.
Surprise, Sally.
So I did warn her the same time I warned you.
Okay.
So, all right. So be prepared for a conversation on delightful rockets.
Yep. Okay. I split my lip, so if
Ah.
my lip bleeds, let me know. So,
All right, I'm moving
anyway.
you someplace I can watch you then.
Just in case, the audience will know if I'm like, hey, Fraser, you're bleeding. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it keeps popping open every time I eat and stuff.
Oh.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm ready to record. If you're ready to record.
Yep. I pressed record on the video. I'm pressing record on the audio. It is recording. The levels look good.
Okay, let's go. Astronomy Cast, episode 652, The Rocket Race Towards Reusability. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. I've been a space and astronomy journalist for over 20 years. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. This was a truly delightful show to prep for, and I love the future we're approaching.
Right. Well, last week I was extremely, overwhelmingly ambivalent. This week, I am more encouraging. I'm shifting to the positive side of ambivalence. All right. Well, last week we talked about how single-use rocketry has changed over time and the role it still plays in launching payloads into orbit and beyond. Today, we'll address the stainless steel elephant in the room and talk about the shift to reusability. And we'll do it in a second, but first it's time for a break. And we're back. All right. So again, last week we talked about single-use rockets and their declining role, but still important role in sending payloads into space, especially beyond low Earth orbit. But the competition to single-use rocket, the wildly bizarre idea of using things multiple times is catching up quick, or has utterly surpassed, or is casting a long shadow over single-use rocketry. So what's the history? I mean, we all know the idea. What is the history of reusing a rocket? And why hasn't this been done until now?
That I don't know. So the question that plagued me while prepping this show, and then I will answer your question. The question that plagued me while prepping for this show is why they didn't try and make the early capsules reusable. Because like Gemini, Apollo, they needed to replace the heat shield clearly. But there was a whole lot of electronics that it felt like they should be able to reuse those capsules. I'm sure there was good reason. I just don't know what those reasons were. And this is one of those things that I now want the answer to. And
but my guess, is that the reason is because something could have broken and you don't know what it is.
Right.
That spaceflight is is extreme. It is not driving a car. It is driving a car at 28,000 kilometers per hour. It is not turning on the brakes for your car to slow yourself down. It is passing through the atmosphere of the Earth and the enormous heat and pressure and temperature. And so it's just like you put all this stuff in and it works new. Do you really want to trust that some part of it isn't, didn't break, didn't snap, didn't jiggle, didn't, and so the amount of time it would take to recertify every single piece of the entire capsule is probably the amount it would cost to build a new one.
And it is indeed that, what does it take and how long does it take to build a new one versus test the old one? That is why so much stuff is still completely disposable when they don't have high cadence and when they take a lot of time to make, or rather don't take a lot of time to make. But it was actually Wernher von Braun who was one of the first people to start thinking about what is necessary to do reusable. And there were some neat ideas to build things that looked shockingly like the currently planned Neutron, the almost in production Starship, where it was this flattened airplane-ish design that he was hoping to be able to launch and then bring back. And he was thinking parachutes, but it goes all the way back to, well, our founding father of rocketry. I had a really interesting realization in the last couple of weeks. Every interesting idea that people are thinking of right now in terms of reusable rocketry, magnetospheres, bases on the moon, lunar rovers, everything is in a technical paper written in the 1960s by some NASA engineers. That all of these ideas have been thought of back in the 60s. It's just that we didn't necessarily either have the technology or the will to carry these things out. It's incredible that, you show me a new idea and I will show you a paper from the 1960s that someone had already described that idea in beautiful detail. But the space shuttle, I think, was the first proper attempt to create a fully reusable two-stage rocket system. Yes. And not only that, but they were looking to reuse both the first and sort of kind of second stage. I don't know what you want to call the space shuttle itself. And
orbiter?
This is, well, but in terms of stages, reusing the second stage is something that we're still largely not doing, where the first stage, originally the SRBs for the space shuttle, they were scooping them out of the ocean, and then the shuttle was coming back for a landing, and it was the external tank that was getting thrown away. And today we are back to the capsule at the top is reused, that second stage is thrown away, but for the Falcon 9, that first stage comes back. For the New Shepard, there isn't really a second stage. It's that first stage and then the capsule. And so we're starting to get there, but there's still pieces we're missing.
I mean, again, if you go back and look at those drawings of the space shuttle from the 1960s, it looks kind of like the space shuttle, except the main fuel stage has wings too.
Yes, they were originally planning to bring it back as well.
Right, and so that you would have the main fuel tank, essentially the booster, and it would have wings, and then you would have the orbiter sitting on top, and it would have wings, and then the whole stack would take off, and then the booster would detach from the orbiter, and it would glide back and land at Kennedy Space Center, and then the orbiter would fly to space, complete its mission, and then it would fly back. And at some point along the journey, they abandoned the idea and shifted to a partial reuse. And, maybe it wasn't ever even feasible, or maybe it was a technology issue, or maybe it was just because they threw too many requirements at the capability of the shuttle, which, a lot of people complain about that. But there was a time when the space shuttle would have been the fully reusable. It was essentially Starship designed in the 1960s. And so again, back to what I said, that every good idea has already been thought of by engineers in the 1960s.
And
But
it's so
that didn't
easy.
happen.
It's so easy to think that it was a technological issue. But then I look at the fact that they got one flight out of Buran and were able to make it land on its own. And so at least the Russians once got it to work. So
Well,
they probably weighed a lot.
Well, and there's an animation by Hayes Gray Art, who was just like one of my favorite YouTube channels, and he posted this rendition of a Russian Energia rocket where the boosters would all sprout little wings and
Yes.
all return to the landing pad, or they would land like aircraft. And so this idea of reusable rocketry, but I think we didn't really see some first initial steps until the 1990s. The Roton, I would say, it was like the Roton. And what was that first reusable rocket? Oh, do you know what I'm talking about?
No. And this is what I love about working with you, is because you've been a journalist for 20 years and
Right.
you can remember some of the stuff that I was still in school while you were being a reporter.
Yeah. Someone I'm sure is going to post in the chat. Let me just get the name of it. There was like this, it did like a launch and landing. I forget the name. Come on. Where is it? I've lost it. The Delta Clipper? No, the Delta Clipper was the X-37. The DCX, I guess. So in the 90s, a couple of companies worked on rockets that look very much like the Blue Origin's New Shepard.
Yes.
It would blast off, fly to a certain height, and then use a propulsive landing to set foot gently on the landing pad, on the launch pad again. And so they were able to demonstrate this capability, but the rotary rocket, which one was it? Yeah, all right.
So
anyway,
the first
Delta Clipper, I'm going to say, was the first one.
The first modern rocket to really do it was actually that New Shepard. And it's one of those wonderful moments where it wasn't actually SpaceX that demonstrated you can land your first stage back just like those 1950s illustrations demonstrated, just like reading in Martian Chronicles. It was Bezos who did it first. It was just Musk who did it a little bit later and then commercialized it and made it work over and over and over again. So in this case, the slightly less fast rabbit, because neither of them is a turtle, was the one that really won the race.
All right, we're going to talk about this some more, but it's time for another break. And we're back. So what do you think was the big technological advance that was required to shift into this realm of reusable booster rockets like the Falcon 9 from SpaceX?
Fast enough processors to be able to handle the gimbaling fins and engines necessary to keep that rocket upright and on target in all the chaos that is our atmosphere.
Yeah, and like engineers considered every possible idea. Like they thought of like, what if we have a parachute? And what if we have something that's inflatable? And what if this thing glides? And what if this thing lands gently in the ocean and we clean it up? They thought of every single, what if we catch it with an airplane, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And in the end, the one that was the simplest, no fuss, no muss, was have the rocket use its own propulsion system to land on the ground again. But the micro adjustments required to do that were just beyond the capability of just computers until the last decade.
And one of the things that I think aided and abetted in allowing this to happen was the commercial space race saying, yeah, we're just going to test this stuff with our own money. We're going to try and get all the federal contracts. But by going solo, we can use technologies that aren't yet space certified and make them space certified along the way. The SLS is using a G3 from the late 90s. And with SpaceX and with the New Shepard, New Glenn series from Blue Origin, they're using the latest processors, CPUs, GPUs to figure everything out as they go. And that is huge.
Yeah, yeah, and it was amazing to watch as SpaceX was able to successfully, they had a lot of failures, and then they started to stick the landings, but the landings weren't close. And I saw a video just a couple of days ago showing just a most recent routine landing of a Falcon 9 booster, and it must have been within centimeters of the X where it was supposed to land. It was so precise, so accurate. They have absolutely nailed this. And at this point, I mean, SpaceX is reusing these Falcon 9 boosters more than 10 times.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And they're able to do that because they have their own stuff they don't mind if they inadvertently blow up. They're right. Testing just how many times you can reuse these boosters by taking the boosters that have been flown more times than they're certified to carry NASA payloads, and they're using them to lift Starlinks. So they have their own commercial case that is paying for them to use experimental technologies.
And so I think they really, in this case, SpaceX is really living the dream of having a space truck.
Yes.
With the Falcon 9. And that was sort of always the hope with the space shuttle. Now, of course, SpaceX isn't the only company in this in the works. There are some competitors, and one delighted you.
This is true. So pretty much everyone in the world is now trying to say, how can I do what SpaceX is making so routine? And my favorite rocket company, I never knew I'd have a favorite rocket company. My favorite rocket company is Rocket Lab. Their Electron rockets are huggable in size, beautiful tech. They are pioneering completely new kinds of rocket drives. And they basically had to say, look, we weigh nothing. We are tiny. There is nowhere in an Electron to put the stuff necessary to come back and land. But we have enough room for a parachute because they're essentially the biggest model rocket out there. And what they're doing is launching, having that first stage come back, launch a drogue chute and a parachute, and there is a good sturdy cable that a helicopter can come along and grab it from between the drogue chute and parachute and haul it on back to the landing site. And this means they don't have to deal with, well, the corrosive nature of ocean water, and they get to reuse that first stage. And they're just in the process of figuring this out, but they're taking this reusability and building it in from step one with their upcoming Neutron rockets, which are again taking that has wings, fully reusable Starship kind of design that again goes back to the original illustrators in the 1950s. There are no new ideas.
Right. And we know that they did a test of the Electron rocket. They caught the booster, but then dropped it. But they just announced just a couple of days ago that they hot-fired the engines, the Rutherford engines from that rocket, and they work great. Yeah. So even though it took a little bit of a swim, they're going to probably be able to reuse those engines should they want to. But the goal, with the Electron, with the Neutron, the goal here now is to shift to a fully reusable two-stage rocket. So not just the first stage, the booster stage, but actually reuse the upper stage as well, that's the holy grail in spaceflight, where you reuse every single part of your rocket, just like you reuse every single part of your airplane.
And their design has been described as the hungry, hungry hippo rocket fairings. With Falcon 9, they're reusing their fairings. They have them pop off and flit back down, and they're working to catch them in these really weird nets attached to big, fast-moving boats. But again, catching things, having to bring them back, that adds cost. And it also adds danger. They are dropping some of these into the ocean and having to scoop them back out. With Neutron, they have this delightful plan to essentially have the fairings hinged, hang from inside their payload, and they're flinging their payload out of this hinged set of fairings that they're then closing back up and bringing that second stage back down to Earth. And I don't know why we haven't done this already, other than that's one more moving part, and moving parts are difficult. But it just seems so straightforward.
It's the upper stage. It's
Yes.
being able to retrieve the upper stage. And this is like SpaceX hasn't been able to do this yet because
Right.
the first stage is going relatively slowly. The upper stage is going close to orbital velocity. It's tricky to then have some way of retrieving that upper stage. So I'd be interested to see how Neutron actually solves this.
Well,
All right, we're going to talk about this.
No,
We're going to talk about this some more in a second, but it's time for another break. And we're back. Now, there's a couple of other rocket companies that we should mention before we get on to, like I said, the stainless steel elephant in the room. One is Blue Origin, and I would love to talk all about Blue Origin, but I have no idea what's going on with Blue Origin. They don't tell us anything. We're just in the dark. I don't know. They make rockets, maybe.
It's actually one of the great frustrations of rocket watching. You have SpaceX on one side with the tank watchers who are getting all sorts of information from SpaceX, and there's all sorts of news, thoughts, tweets, and it feels like there's this constant deluge of information. You have all the public folks like Ariane 5 that are sharing what they're doing. And then with Blue Origin, we're essentially having to look for no-fly zones to crop up and guess that maybe they're going to fly something based on a no-fly zone being published.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have been watching the launches and landings of the New Shepard, but that is a suborbital flight. It goes up, it comes back down, carrying tourists. But they are, in theory, building a giant rocket with a reusable first stage, and we have no idea. So until they tell us interesting things, they shall remain just barely mentioned. The other company we should talk about definitely is United Launch Alliance with their Vulcan rocket. And I think I mentioned this, I've been fortunate enough to actually talk to Tori Bruno about this. And the plan for the Vulcan is to have to capture the engines. Essentially, the engines, the motors, are the most expensive, most complicated part of the rocket. And so if you can save those, you're saving most of your development cost. And so their plan is to use a giant inflatable heat shield that will expand like a bouncy castle, and the motors will descend through the atmosphere. And what's cool is it's the same technology that NASA is planning to use for Mars, for landing heavier payloads into the atmosphere of Mars, up to say 3 tons. So the technology that's going to be retrieving Vulcan rocket engines, and these are Blue Origin BE-4 engines. So it's the same. So at least we know a little bit more about Blue Origin's engines than we do know about their actual rocket companies. So the Chinese are going all in on reusable rockets. There's many private and government funded companies that are developing reusable rockets. We've seen we've seen some tests. Things have climbed to a couple of kilometers. We've seen some plans, but we don't have a competitor to SpaceX yet. But I am guessing we will see that just in a matter of a couple of years, where they will shift over big parts of their industry into reusable rockets. So let's talk about the big steel monster in
Yes.
Texas.
Yes. The one that, hold on, my camera decided to be drunk. I don't know if you saw that, but my tripod suddenly shifted. All right. You want to ask the question again? I'm sorry.
So let's talk about the big steel monster in Texas.
And you and I were actually together in Huntsville when they announced that it was going to be steel instead of carbon fiber. And
That's
carbon
right.
fiber is what Rocket Labs is going with. So I just love the diversity of what's being used. So Starship, it has a belly covered in tiles to act as a heat shield. And the idea is that you have a giant rocket that is it launches like a normal rocket, and then it comes down and gets caught by chopsticks. Again, giant chopsticks. And then on top of it is Starship, that is like some of the original ideas to have space planes mounted on the top of your rocket. Well, they're actually taking the idea that Dream Chaser and others have had for these small space planes and scaling it up to something that is basically the 747 of carrying your crew into space. And the idea is it will be able to come down on its belly on that heat shield through the atmosphere, use avionics to control its descent, and then flip right before it gets to the ground and land politely, just like they're doing with the first stage of the Falcon 9. So you don't need to have those long runways that we had with the space shuttle. They're just going to be, well, doing their thing, potentially even out on the old reused oil platforms in the ocean.
And it's kind of amazing to see that SpaceX is just building these rockets out of stainless steel just on the landscape, just like as if they were office towers.
Yes.
And yet, in the end, this office tower is going to fly to space. And if they pull this off, you've got a rocket that is capable of launching more than 100 tons into low Earth orbit. And yet, both the booster stage and the upper stage are fully reusable.
Yes.
And they can both be landed, both can be refueled again, and in theory, launch again within the day, which is incredible.
And there's two different versions of Starship under development. We really only see the one right now that they're testing out in West Texas, and that's the one that will go from ground to space and back again. But they're also developing what is essentially a ferry system to get from the surface of the moon and then out to a capsule or a small space station in cislunar space, where we are looking at a future very much like the For All Mankind, where you have astronauts as ferry drivers. And instead of having that lunar lander that they have in For All Mankind, it's going to be a giant starship doing the 747 kind of thing.
It's funny when you see the animation of the landing system docking with the lunar gateway, and it's bigger.
Yes.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's huge. So where we stand right now is in this period of limbo, of flux. Blue Origin, who knows what they're doing? Right. It's a mystery. United Launch Alliance, they're waiting on their rocket engines, and they're going to be building the Vulcan rocket.
Yes.
Rocket Lab, they're working on the Neutron. SpaceX, they've got the Falcon 9 going, but all eyes are on what they're going to do with Starship. Yeah. Who knows what China is working on? We didn't even mention Russia. Russia says stuff. So
India is trustworthy, and they are working on things. Arianespace is looking at things.
Europe is not doing too much.
I said looking.
All right, fine.
They're in the contemplating stage.
So the point being that we are in this weird place where we don't know if which of these big bets are going to play off, and how and when. And it's kind of exciting. Like, there are a lot of players in the game. Obviously, the Starship seems like the most likely one to take off and run with it. but there's some really good ideas coming out of Rocket Lab, even efficiencies coming, and who knows, Blue Origin may have a beautiful, wonderful solution in their giant factory. We have no idea.
Here's to hoping.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, it's just such a thrilling time to be watching this space, pardon the pun, and to see what happens. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you. And as always, I forgot to open the file first, so I'm going to hold very still while I open the file I forgot to open. 6:52. Thank you, Fraser, and thank you to all of our Patreon followers at patreon.com/astronomycast. You allow us to, constantly improve on this show, doing better and better, hopefully over time. This week, I would like to thank in particular Stephen Veit, Burry Gowen, Jordan Young, Kevin Lyle, Jeanette Wink, Nanoflips, Bore Andre Livsval, JF Rajotte, Andrew Poelstra, Venkatesh Chary, Brian Cagle, David Truog, TheGiantNothing, Aurora Lipper, David, Gerhard Schwarzer, Bill Hamilton, Buzz Parsec, Ronald McCoy, Kaka Sarif, Laura Kettleson, Robert Plasma, Les Howard, Jack Mudge, Joe Holstein, Gordon Dewis, Frank Tippin, Adam Annis Brown, Alexis, Richard Drum, William Baker, Wanderer M101, Zero Chill, Felix Goot, William Andrews, Gold, and Jeff Collins. Thank you, all of you, for making this show possible.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. And then they saved.
So I finally deleted all of the backup recordings that I had sitting on my computer, and I just cleared up 50 gigabytes of hard drive space on my computer, with like a year or two's worth of just every audio that I'd done, just like storing it on my desktop, just going like, I don't have time for this. So I got so now my hard drive will stop complaining at me for a while.
Awesome.
Although I do think it might be time to upgrade, because I'm only using a 250 gig hard drive SSD for my main drive.
Are you on something that you can add drives to?
I can add drives, but like it'll be my boot drive, so I'm gonna have to install it. I'm kind of tempted to shift to a Mac Mini as my just main PC, because I'm getting a Steam Deck, and that's gonna be my gaming machine.
I just got mine. I haven't opened the box yet because I had stuff I had to do, but my Steam Deck is sitting there waiting to be opened.
Yeah, I'm hearing people are just loving it.
Yeah, a whole group of us at work all, like, I forget who spotted it first, and then we're like, we are buying this, and we're all getting them this week. It's fun.
Yeah, it's funny that the timing is exactly right. So I'm going to get a Steam Deck, and then I'm probably going to shift to a Mac for just this being a streaming machine, as opposed to also being like a gaming machine, and then I can just, because you can connect like an external monitor and keyboard and mouse to your Steam Deck and just use it like a desktop PC. Machine, plug it in. Yeah, it's your gaming PC, right? It's your gaming rig, or just drop it into just drop it in front of your TV. I'm sure people will already sell mounts that you can just plug the thing into, and now you've got a gaming rig connected to your TV. So I think that's the way. There you go. Kerbal01 is saying, welcome to the M1 Mac Mini and Steam Deck Club. Yeah,
that's what he has.
And then and then just strip back my desktop machine, because really I need something that can stream, that has the processing power to stream, to do some light video, audio editing, productivity software. That's kind of it. I don't need if I don't need like a fast video card. Although I mean the Mac Minis are pretty good, but I'm kind of hoping they're going to do like the Mac Mini Pro,
so
like a little faster.
Today, while we are recording, is Apple's big development announcement. But they're saying that they're going to announce the non-mobile hardware in a month or so. if the rumors are
Okay.
true. So
Yeah. Yeah.
wait till the end of October, I guess.
So we got the iPhone 14, and
Yeah.
that's but not the actual Pro. Yeah. Yeah.
Did
So I
they
was gonna
announce a
wait.
new watch?
I think new AirPods, the Series 8 watch. So maybe I'll end up with another hand-me-down from my wife.
I love my Apple Watch. I'm not wearing it right
Really?
now, but yeah.
Yeah. I use a Garmin. I really like it. So
It
I'm going to be hard pressed to shift away from my Garmin.
my Apple Watch actually helped me finally get the immune disorder I have diagnosed. And so that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something I've had my entire life and doctors have been like idiopathic something we can't figure out. It finally, thanks to an Apple Watch, was diagnosed.
There you go. All right, so let's take on some questions. So a couple of people are noting that Brownsville is not in West Texas, so South Texas. If you can talk about the location of,
It's west of Houston.
but the SpaceX facility is South Texas. That's all. Just saying.
I'm
Just
opening
like,
a map.
don't kill the messenger.
I know. I'm just now like, it's
Down
west
by
of
the
Houston,
ocean.
isn't it?
Sure, but not like Odessa, West Texas, not El Paso,
Yeah,
West
no,
Texas.
that I'll give you. That I'll give you.
Nobody has a question.
Ah,
So either we just shut this stream down, or someone triggers me to rant something. Um, so I've been playing around with the artificial intelligence tools for drawing
yeah,
pictures, and
yeah,
I've been mucking around. I've got an account with Midjourney, which has been a lot of fun.
yeah.
I've been looking at Stable Diffusion from afar, but I haven't actually installed it. But the thing that's kind of amazing to me is, like, if you want to run the Stable Diffusion model,
Uh-huh.
it's a 4 GB file.
Oh God.
So you can download a 4 GB file to your computer and then draw a question. Sorry, then draw any image that you can possibly imagine. And so, like, all of human imaginings fit in a 4 GB file, which is
Yeah.
weird and way smaller if you want to be more efficient. Like, if you only want to talk about architecture, if you only want to talk about tigers, then the file is way smaller. And so it's a weird thought that
Yeah.
anything that we can draw and imagine fits within that size. Like
So, do you remember when the TV?
landmarks, mountains, people, animals, concepts, everything.
Do you remember when the TV show Caprica came out and they were talking about reducing a entire life to basically your receipts and everything else, and then being able to basically recreate the human from all of that?
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting we are like the sentence, "This is how you get Cylons," is something I find myself
Right.
saying on a fairly regular basis.
So the proposal that someone made is that you can, if you transfer the model, then you could then make a movie in a compressed text file,
Yes.
because you're essentially describing the scenes of the movie
Yeah.
in a way that it renders roughly similar from viewing to viewing. Right? It's almost like it's a screenplay. And so
It's a
instead of
new,
you actually, you're recording the screenplay, you're passing on the screenplay,
yeah.
and then the AI is generating the movie from the screenplay in real time. And I think you're exactly right that our lives could be compressed down to a bunch of stories and then recreated using a reality model to a level of fidelity that is perfectly acceptable. Right? Is that all a dream is? I don't know. It's weird.
Oh,
It's a very weird feeling.
it
So,
it feels like we're vectorizing life in a way.
yeah. Yeah. And so will all creative stuff turn into this? Anyway, now we got some questions. So, but anyway, just think about that soon your entire aspect of human existence will fit within a multi-gigabyte file that you
Yeah.
can download and simulate on your computer. All right. Delicious Plum asks, any recent images from James Webb? I love that it was used to capture a stunning image of Jupiter. Who
Judy
did we get
Schmidt.
a good one?
Have you seen what she's doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
So we discussed this some on the Daily Space on Tuesday, where it's doing all the stuff I'm sure you've seen, like Jupiter in this gorgeous ghostly shades of blue and gray, an exoplanet fully resolved. But the things that are getting me are the images of spiral galaxies.
Yeah.
They looked at M74, and folks have been describing it as an eldritch horror.
Yeah.
But because it's only seeing the cool gas we never get to see that has been expanded out into this filigree by stellar winds and supernova inside the gas.
Yeah.
And they're creepy. Another spiral galaxy looks like the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, the color choices are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. If you're going to do the whole thing in gothic purples and stuff, you're going to get eldritch. You can do anything in that palette, and you would probably feel a little squicked out. The image that we got today was of the Tarantula Nebula, which has been,
seen that one yet.
I think it's the best image that Webb has taken so far. So you should absolutely take a look at it. And this is a giant star-forming region in the Large Magellanic Cloud, and it is already an extreme place with stars that are bigger than anything we have nearby. Like the most massive star that we know of is in this region.
Yeah.
It's astonishing. So, but you're exactly right. Like, the thing with James Webb is that the data that's being downloaded is being handed off to the scientists for them to do their work, and they get 1 year of exclusivity to do their science. And so they can choose to make their data available to the public if they want, and if so, then it dumps onto this archive server that you can go and troll through, but it's very obtuse. Like there'll be 50 different files. They're all FITS files and data files that were associated with some piece of research that was being done, and somebody's got to open up these FITS files and go, is there anything in this? And Judy is the person who is single-handedly, and I can't say that enough. No, she is single-handedly revealing the pictures that James Webb is taking that would otherwise just be complete and total radio silence from this telescope.
So she's on Twitter. She has a Flickr account. Follow her both places.
God, I got to interview her. Yeah. Like we've talked many times in the past. She's a good friend. And she is doing such important work that I am like, we would just be bereft without her doing this work now. And she was a monster during the Hubble days, and she is just taking it to the next level with the James Webb pictures. So good. John Suffield asks, what caused the initial huge expansion of the universe after the Big Bang?
No idea.
Like, when you think about the inflation era, what did we think drove inflation? Do we know? I mean, you have the big, like you had matter compressed to some certain degree, and then it went undergone. But what's the word for that?
It experienced.
It experienced? Yeah.
Yes.
It experienced a dramatic
inflation.
We need a new word. That is the past, I don't know what you call it even, of undergo.
I'm just going to go with experienced.
No, I understand that, but now I'm just like, I feel like I need to add a new word to the English language because we need undergoed. Right? Anyway.
Undergone.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd say it had undergone. So anyway. So what drove that expansion?
No idea.
To get that acceleration?
We're figuring this out. We don't know.
Yeah.
And did you see the paper? What journal was it in?
Yeah,
Phys Rev Letters.
Underwent.
There was a paper in Phys Rev Letters where researchers at 2 Japanese universities went through Subaru Super Prime survey and looked at 1.5 million Z equals 4, 12
Yes.
billion years back galaxies, distorted as all get-go, and were able to, by identifying where these lens galaxies were using superprime, they were then able to say, okay, so we know there's a galaxy here. Let's now look at Planck's cosmic microwave background data to find distortions in that caused by the gravity of these 12 billion light years back galaxies. And now they've amassed a light ratio, and they were able to figure out the clumpiness of the universe when it was 1.7 billion years old. And it doesn't match our lambda cold dark matter models, which means we are on our way, maybe, if this result holds up, to knowing where our understanding of the universe broke, so we can get H0 to match between Planck and supernova results.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yes.
But then the next question is like, why?
Again, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah. So, and Physics Police is mentioning in the chat that just inflation was driven by insert quantum field here.
Yes.
Which they call the inflaton field. And so there was a field that drove the expansion. What drove the expansion? Well, it was the field that drove the expansion, obviously. What drove that expansion? The expansion field. Right?
We are very good at naming things that we don't understand. It's like a special skill astronomers have.
Yeah. But it is mind-boggling to think that for some reason this inflaton field kicked in, and then all of the expansion that we're experiencing today is mostly due to the leftover momentum of this period of time that was a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing. Ilya asks, are there any special precautionary measures for ISS for meteor showers?
I mean, they in general have the capacity to seek shelter in the capsules that are attached to the ISS. But meteor showers are basically micrometeorites hitting the atmosphere. And as far as I know, they don't seek shelter during storms.
No.
During solar storms, they seek shelter, but that's a different issue.
Do they, though? Because they're protected
the really
by the
bad ones,
magnetosphere.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, they just the station modules are designed to handle particles of a certain size, and they're hitting all the time. And apparently it's unnerving to be in the station and you hear pung.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they can handle it. And and when they go out on spacewalks and they show you pictures of the solar panels, you can see all the pockmarks.
Yeah. It's wild.
And so it's designed to take the kinds of hits that you would expect to be out in space. If something big hit, it would cause damage.
Yes.
Physics Police is asking, how much does it cost to launch a personal sunshade to geostationary orbit? I want less isolation here at my house.
I don't know. That is an interesting thought experiment.
What? But you would if you want to be in shadow all the time, you need to go to the L1 Sun Earth Lagrange point. Right?
No, because the planet rotates.
No, I understand. Oh.
So he's right. You'd want geostationary.
But that wouldn't get you a shadow either.
If you made it big enough. But if you made it big enough, it would be a really bad day for the planet.
No, but you would have in geostationary, you would have a satellite that's hovering directly overhead.
So what he's looking to do is create a solar eclipse where the shadow touches the planet. So the moon is moving at the wrong rate to keep the shadow touching the planet in one place all the time. But if you had you can change the angle of it something in just the right orbit, it would have to be massive.
But you would need it to be. Hold on a second. Like, wait a
Yeah.
minute here. You would need something that is
Not geostationary. It would
not
have to
geostationary,
maneuver,
and it's
and it would
not a
have to
Lagrange.
rotate.
It would have to be on an orbit.
Yeah.
But is there an orbit that you could take that would cast a shadow on the same part of the Earth for as
No.
long as possible?
Well, for as long as possible, yes.
Yeah.
But
like, I think about those Molniya orbits that
Right.
the Russians use to fake geostationary orbit.
yeah.
And so
But you need to have a
because you
series of them because of how the angle constantly changes.
yeah. Yeah. And so your satellite is going to need to be in between your spot on the Earth and the sun at all times.
So this
Even
is where
though
it
the
has to
Earth
be
is
a
turning.
series of satellites in the, I can't pronounce them, orbits that you just said correctly.
Molniya?
So that they're constantly hopping into the right place, where that right place changes as the sun goes from horizon to horizon.
Yeah. That's a tricky problem.
It's fun, though.
It is fun. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's the solution.
Not all solutions are good solutions. I think that might be the most complicated solution. I mean, ideally, you just want a drone. You just want a drone. Stick something a few hundred feet up that just can move with the sun.
But it needs to move with the sun. It needs
Yeah.
to in the morning. It needs to be just above the horizon, and it's casting a shadow on your house. But then during midday, it's more over your house, and then in sunset, it's on the other side of the sky, casting a shadow on the other side.
In The Simpsons, didn't Burns have in one of the episodes a giant sunshade on an arm that moved?
Yeah, but I don't know if it moved around the whole... Like, he was turning it. I don't think that's going to do the trick. So we need something. Mm-hmm. And so if you expand that idea, you have your drone, and your drone starts off in the morning, rising with the sun, and then following the sun across the sky, when really what it's doing is it's out there in space as the Earth is turning.
Yeah.
That is in orbit.
It's very ballistic.
Yeah. What is that orbit? Is that orbit real? Is there some stable version of that orbit? I don't know. I wish somebody in orbital mechanics knew. I know the person to ask, though. So
okay.
I interviewed her last season for just like orbits. And we just went through every single bizarre, kooky orbit I could think of, and it was a lot of fun. Renu Malhotra, anyway, and so maybe I'll kick this one at her as well.
Cool.
But yeah, it's a very clever idea. All right. What time is it? 4 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Zapfan asks, is Starship the modern Sea Dragon?
I don't know if it or Neutron will be the correct response. I don't remember how big Sea Dragon is.
I feel like it's 600 tons to low Earth orbit.
Okay.
So no, none of them are, because Sea Dragon although there were ideas to make it reusable, which just takes it to the next level. It was 550 tons in expendable configuration.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was the most... Essentially, it was this giant rocket that was so powerful, it would tear itself apart with the sound waves coming off of its rocket engine. And so it was launched out of the water, or it would be launched out of the water. And so you would take this rocket, pull it out to the middle of the ocean, and then just the top would be poking out, and then the thing would ignite under the water and would lift itself out of the water and fly to space. It would be 150 meters long, 23 meters in diameter. So think about current Falcon 9 is a 5-meter fairing.
40 meters higher than Saturn V.
Yeah. But a 23-meter launch fairing. So again, even Starship is going to have a 9-meter launch
Yeah.
variant.
Neutron's 5 meters.
Yeah, so this is just redonkulously big. And the upper stage would be reusable in that it could be used for space stations and things like that. And again, like 1960s, 1962, this idea was proposed, and yet, here we are. So no, nothing as ludicrous as the Sea Dragon has been developed, or is even in the works.
Yeah.
And yet we are 50 years after the idea, possibly considering it. And if you watch For All Mankind, they use Sea Dragon for delivering payloads to the moon, and it's awesome. They show you a launch of it, and then they reference it a bunch of times. Yeah. All hail For All Mankind. Watch that show if you haven't watched it. It's so good. Okay. I think we reached the end of our hour.
Okay. And we will be back on Monday. Let me pull up what our topic is, because my brain has forgotten since I last looked.
Yeah, I don't see this on this list.
Yeah, so it's over on the other list. So we're looking at climate change, looking at the variables.
Right on. That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to the email after that one. Looking forward to all of the...
We're discussing the variables, so that at least should be less controversial.
You know what? I don't care. The climate change deniers can rail as hard as they want. I am immune to their... they're paid by big oil.
Yeah.
They're just cashing checks. So.
It's not just big oil. It's people who want to see the world burn, preferably U.S. first.
I mean, that kind of apocalyptic fantasy maybe is part of it, but there's all the people who send you whenever you mention climate, you get all these people in the comments, and I just imagine them going to the bank and cashing their check from the oil company, or I imagine the disinformation campaign that convinced them that climate change is not a real thing. Those people cashing their checks.
The disinformation campaign people are the ones cashing their checks. Yeah. And they write a whole lot of robots.
Yeah. Yeah. They made a lot of money. So, all right. Well, we reached the end of our show. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thanks, Pamela, for bringing the brain. Thanks for everyone watching us on YouTube and on Twitch. Thanks to all the moderators for your help. Thanks to the enormous army of editors, producers, behind the scenes who help us keep this show going. We couldn't do this without you.
The Patreon,
the patrons
who let us pay our army.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Pamela. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds great. See you later, Fraser. Bye-bye.